They called her just a maid. They smirked when she walked in, looked down on her like she was nothing. Just the help. Just someone to sweep floors, scrub toilets, and disappear. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, is that the woman they were mocking was hiding something big, something powerful. And when she finally took off her uniform, let's just say, everyone gasped. So before you judge the quiet one, the one who blends in, you better know who you're dealing with. Because this story is going to change the way you see people forever. If you've ever been underestimated, disrespected, treated like you don't matter, watch this to the end. You'll walk away with your head held higher, and a life lesson no one can take from you. Let's begin. Her name was Miss Clara Mae Williams, but at the prestigious Prescott estate, she was just called Clara. Not Miss Clara. Not even Ms. Williams. Just Clara. Or worse, the maid. Every day she wore her crisp navy uniform with her name tag, neatly pressed, polished shoes, and a quiet smile. She showed up on time, 6 days a week, dusting chandeliers, cleaning marble floors, and polishing silver cutlery that no one even used. The Prescott estate was massive, gated, guarded, and glittering. Owned by Elliot Prescott, a third-generation billionaire, and his icy wife Kendra Prescott, a socialite with a talent for backhanded compliments and barely concealed contempt. Clara, make sure you polish the baseboards this time. Last week you missed a spot, Kendra said, sipping green juice that Clara herself had made. Yes, ma'am, Clara said, bowing her head slightly. And please don't make eye contact with the guests, Kendra added. You have a habit of lingering. Clara said nothing. She simply nodded and went back to folding towels, pressing out every wrinkle with quiet precision. But behind those calm eyes was fire. You see, Clara wasn't just some maid. She wasn't some sad woman with no other options. Clara was playing a long game, one that none of them saw coming. But before we get there, you need to understand just how bad things got. It was a Friday afternoon, the day of the Prescott's annual charity gala. Politicians, CEOs, influencers, all of them would be there, dressed in designer gowns and tailored suits, pretending to care about world hunger while nibbling foie gras and sipping champagne worth more than Clara's monthly paycheck. Clara had been assigned to serve canapes. And Kendra Prescott, in her usual cold tone, had made one thing clear: do not speak unless spoken to. I don't want guests distracted by the staff. Yes, ma'am. By 7 p.m., the estate was flooded with the elite. Clara moved through the crowd with a silver tray in hand, her expression unreadable. She watched as people laughed, toasted, and dropped casual cruelty like it was confetti. And then it happened. Oh, I almost didn't see you there, said Veronica Langston, the Prescott's longtime friend and the kind of woman who wore pearls at yoga. She stepped back dramatically, pretending Clara had startled her. You're so quiet. Like a little shadow. Clara offered a soft smile. Would you like an hors d'oeuvre, ma'am? Veronica didn't take one. Instead, she looked Clara up and down and said loudly enough for the surrounding guests to hear. Imagine having to wear that hideous thing all day. I don't know how you people do it. You people. Clara's smile didn't flinch. But a man nearby, Derek Thompson, a rising tech investor, laughed and chimed in, well, that's the job, right? Clean serve, repeat. Not everyone's cut out for greatness. And they all laughed. Like it was funny. Like she wasn't even human. Kendra didn't say a word. She just looked over at Clara and gave a small nod of disapproval. Like this was Clara's fault for being visible. Clara quietly turned away. But in her eyes, something shifted. Not rage. Not tears. Just resolve. Because they didn't know who she really was. Not one of them had bothered to ask. Not one of them knew her secret. But tonight? That was going to change. After the guests moved to the ballroom, Clara slipped out quietly. She entered the staff quarters, pulled a key from a tiny pouch stitched inside her apron, and opened a hidden locker. Inside was a sleek black garment bag. She unzipped it carefully, revealing a breathtaking evening gown, deep emerald green, with a slit and diamond-studded neckline. She pulled out a velvet box, too. Inside was a necklace made of rare Zambian emeralds and a matching pair of earrings. She sat down in front of the mirror and began to transform. She peeled off her uniform, folded it with care, and stepped into the gown like she'd done it 100 times before. Her natural curls were styled to perfection. Her makeup subtle, elegant. She looked like a queen. But this wasn't just about looking good. This wasn't a Cinderella moment. This was strategy. You see, Clara had a second identity. One not tied to a mop or feather duster. In the world of high finance, she was known as C.M. Williams, the mysterious investor behind some of the fastest-growing tech and real estate ventures on the East Coast. A ghost to most. A myth to many. Only a few knew her name. Even fewer had ever seen her face. She had watched these people for months. Seen how they moved. Heard what they said when they thought no one was listening. And now she was ready to show them what just the maid really looked like when she stepped into her full power. Clara emerged from the hallway and re-entered the ballroom, this time through the front. Heads turned instantly. Murmurs rippled. Cameras flashed. "Who is that?" someone whispered. "Is she royalty?" said another. Kendra Prescott narrowed her eyes. Why does she look familiar? But the real moment came when Elliot Prescott himself approached her. "Welcome," he said with a rehearsed smile. "I'm Elliot Prescott. And you are?" Clara smiled. "C.M. Williams. Investor. Philanthropist. And tonight, your featured guest." Elliot's smile faltered. I wasn't told." "Oh, I know," Clara said gently. "I wanted it to be a surprise." And just like that, the entire room went silent. Veronica Langston's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble floor. Derek Thompson's mouth hung open. And Kendra? Kendra's hands were trembling. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Because what Clara said next would turn the entire night upside down. She leaned in, took the mic from the stage, and looked across the sea of stunned faces. Then she said, "You call me the maid. But now you're going to call me your boss." The entire ballroom froze. Glasses trembled. Forks clinked awkwardly on fine china. Every socialite, every investor, every executive in the room looked up with wide eyes. Not at a server but at a woman who had just flipped their entire world on its head. Kendra Prescott, standing by the bar in her diamond-studded gown, looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her husband, Elliot, tried to smile, his upper lip twitching with confusion and panic. "You're joking, right?" Kendra said finally, her voice cracking like thin ice. Clara's gaze didn't waver. "No, Kendra. I'm not. But don't worry, you'll have time to catch up." She turned back to the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight. You see, this annual Prescott Charity Gala has been used for years to raise money, or at least pretend to raise money, for causes that barely receive a fraction of the funds. The rest? Well, let's just say it never makes it to the communities that actually need it." Murmurs spread across the room like a wildfire. Whispers of embezzlement, fraud, and "did she just say that?" rippled through the air. Clara continued, voice calm but fierce. "But tonight things change. Because as of 8 a.m. this morning, I purchased the controlling interest in Prescott International Holdings." The microphone feedback squealed as gasps erupted across the crowd. Kendra's mouth dropped. Elliot looked like he'd been punched. Clara pulled a manila folder from her clutch. "Full disclosure documents. Filed and processed. I now own 51.6% of this company, including the real estate development firm, the logistics branch, and, most notably, the charity trust that funds this very event. That means legally and financially. I own the house you live in, Elliot. The car you drive. The stocks in your name. Everything." Elliot stormed forward. "You can't just waltz in here and claim." Clara turned her gaze to him, sharp, direct, deadly calm. "Oh, I didn't just waltz in. I've been building this plan for years. Watching how you treat people like me. People you thought were beneath you. You were too arrogant to ever look deeper. That was your first mistake." The crowd parted as Jordan Klein, a senior partner from one of the top law firms in the state, stepped forward. "It's all legal. I oversaw the transaction myself. Ms. Williams is the rightful majority shareholder." "But how?" Elliot asked, now pale and trembling. "You'd be surprised what a maid sees," Clara said quietly. "The papers you left out in your office. The drunken phone calls you thought no one overheard. The secrets Kendra whispered on the terrace when she thought I was pruning hedges." Kendra's face turned red. "You little snake." "No," Clara interrupted, her voice rising for the first time. "You don't get to call me names anymore. You don't get to shame the help and then cry foul when the help turns out to be smarter than you. You called me a maid like it was an insult. But I wore that uniform with pride, because hard work doesn't make you less. Cruelty does." The audience applauded. A few people stood up. Others looked down ashamed. Veronica Langston, the same woman who'd mocked Clara's hideous uniform, slipped quietly behind a pillar, too embarrassed to be seen. And then came the twist. Clara looked down at the papers again. Now I could end the night here. Take my title, move into the top office, and let you both be forgotten. But that wouldn't be justice. Not yet. She turned to the crowd. Because I discovered something in the company records. Something no one's dared speak of. Elliot's smile faltered completely. He stepped forward, nervous. Clara, please. Let's talk privately. Oh, we'll talk, Clara said. But not in secret. Not anymore. She pulled out a second folder. See, last quarter's financials were missing millions in charitable donations. Money meant to build housing on the South Side. Money that mysteriously disappeared through shell corporations and forged invoices. Kendra visibly staggered. You don't know what you're talking about. Clara locked eyes with her. Except I do. Because I traced every single wire transfer. Every account. Every stolen dollar. And all of it leads to you, Kendra. Gasp. Phones were pulled out. Cameras started rolling. You're bluffing. Kendra shouted. No, Clara said softly. I'm not. Jordan Klein stepped forward again. We've submitted all the evidence to the authorities. The FBI is already en route. At that moment, a booming knock echoed through the ballroom. Every head turned toward the massive front doors. Boom, boom, boom. Then came the voice, firm and commanding, Federal agents. Open the door. Panic broke out. Guests scattered. Kendra backed away in horror. Elliot looked like he was about to faint. But Clara? Clara stood still. Unmoving. Glorious. And then she whispered something only Kendra could hear. You called me invisible. Now the whole world will see you for who you really are. The ballroom was no longer a place of celebration. It had become a crime scene. As the heavy oak doors burst open and agents from the FBI stormed in, a collective hush fell over the crowd. Flashes of navy blue jackets, stern faces, and badges glinting under the chandeliers sent a wave of fear rippling through the elite guests of the Prescott Gala. Kendra staggered backward, her designer heels clicking erratically against the marble floor as if she were trying to flee the weight of her own guilt. Clara stood tall, unbothered, the only person in the room who looked completely in control. Federal Bureau of Investigation, barked the lead agent. We have a warrant for the arrest of Kendra Prescott and Elliot Prescott on charges of fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Kendra's eyes widened in disbelief. This is a mistake. This can't be happening. But before she could take another breath, she was surrounded by agents. Elliot tried to shield her, stammering legal jargon as though he could bluff his way out of prison, but the agents brushed him aside. Kendra screamed, You set me up, Clara? You've been planning this. Clara didn't flinch. No, Kendra. You did this to yourself. I just made sure justice showed up on time. As handcuffs clicked around their wrists, the photographers who were once hired to take pictures of high society elites were now capturing the disgrace of the Prescott name. News alerts began buzzing on guests' phones. Hashtag Prescott scandal was already trending on social media. The mighty had fallen, and the world was watching. Outside, reporters swarmed the front gates. Clara stepped to the podium once more, speaking now not to the elites, but to the people watching live on social media and news outlets. For years, the Prescotts used their influence to silence voices, steal from the vulnerable, and manipulate systems meant to protect us. But no more. Today, the system holds them accountable. Applause erupted, from staff members, from guests who had long suspected foul play but were too afraid to speak, from former employees who'd come back to witness this moment. Clara's speech turned into a rallying cry. But just as the dust began to settle, an uncomfortable silence fell over the ballroom. Jordan Klein, the lawyer assisting Clara, approached her with a troubled expression. Clara, we have a problem. What kind of problem? He hesitated. There's a third name on some of the documents. Someone even higher up. A silent partner funding everything behind the scenes. Clara raised an eyebrow. Someone more powerful than Kendra and Elliot? He nodded grimly. Yes. And this person was funneling the money, not just for real estate scams but for something darker. Overseas accounts. Ties to illegal labor. We thought the Prescotts were the top, but they were just pawns. A cold chill ran down Clara's spine. Jordan handed her a file. Take a look. You won't believe who it is. Clara opened the folder and stared at the name. Her eyes widened. Her hands began to tremble. No, she whispered. It can't be. Jordan nodded solemnly. I triple-checked. It's not just true, it's worse than we imagined. Clara looked up at him, heart pounding. If this person finds out we know. Jordan cut her off. It may already be too late. Suddenly the ballroom lights flickered. The screens showing the news broadcast cut to static for a moment, then glitched into darkness. A single message appeared on the monitors in red block letters. You should have stayed in your place. Gasps rang out. Guests scrambled. Clara's voice was shaky but calm. Cut the power. Get everyone out. Now. But before anyone could move, the fire alarm went off. Sprinklers rained down over designer gowns and tuxedos. Panic erupted. In the chaos, Clara's phone buzzed with a private message. No name. Just a video file. She opened it. It was footage, grainy black and white security cam footage. Of her. In her apartment. From the night before. Someone had been watching her. And then, the video cut to black. Another message flashed across the screen. You uncovered them. Now they're coming for you. Clara dropped her phone, the gravity of it all crushing in. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. The ballroom was now drenched in confusion and fear. Smoke from the fire alarm and the cold sting of sprinklers created a surreal chaos, like a movie scene gone horribly real. Clara clutched the phone in her soaked hand, her fingers trembling, not from the cold water but from what she had just seen. That video wasn't just surveillance. It was a warning. A message from someone who wasn't just watching her, but tracking her every move. Jordan rushed to her side. We need to get you out of here, now. But Clara stood still. Her eyes were locked on the giant screens above the stage. The red letters had vanished. Now a symbol pulsed on the screen. A black chess piece, a bishop surrounded by a snake. It meant nothing to the crowd. But to Clara, it meant everything. Her voice was barely above a whisper. It's him? Jordan looked at her. You know who it is? Clara's expression darkened. Not just who. What he is. Flashback, 10 years earlier. Clara, fresh out of business school, was working for a non-profit startup that aimed to revitalize underserved communities. That's where she first met Augustus Kane, a billionaire philanthropist with a reputation for charm, generosity, and secrets. He'd offered to fund Clara's dream project, low-income housing built by local labor. But weeks into construction, the funding dried up. Workers went unpaid. The neighborhood was left in ruins. When Clara demanded answers, Kane's lawyers threatened to blacklist her. She lost everything. Her name, her network, her credibility. That's when she became a maid, to survive. That's when the fire inside her began to burn. Back in the present, Clara turned to Jordan. Augustus Kane. He's the real one behind the Prescott fraud. The shell companies. The money laundering. He's been using charities as a front for years. And now he knows I'm coming for him. Jordan's eyes widened. But Kane is untouchable. He owns judges. Politicians. He's got ex-military contractors as bodyguards. I don't care, Clara said, fierce and steady. He took everything from me once. I let him get away with it. Not again. Just then security rushed in. Ms. Williams, there's someone at the back entrance demanding to speak with you. Says it's urgent. Who? She asked. The guard hesitated. A woman. She wouldn't give her name, but she said to tell you, it's about Kane. And your mother. Clara froze. My mother? What does she have to do with this? The guard shrugged. She said you'd want to know, before it's too late. Clara glanced at Jordan, who nodded cautiously. I'll have backup follow you. But be careful. This could be a trap. Moments later, Clara was led to a dark service hallway behind the ballroom. The fluorescent lights buzzed above her as she approached a figure standing in the shadows. A woman wrapped in a hooded coat stepped forward slowly. I knew you'd come, the woman said softly. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Wait, I know you. You're... The woman pulled down her hood. Clara's knees buckled. Aunt Myra? She hadn't seen her in over 20 years. She was thought to be dead. Tears filled Clara's eyes. They said you died in that fire. I was supposed to, Myra whispered. But Kane made me disappear. I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. About your mother. About her death. And about you. Clara stepped closer. What do you mean? Myra looked around nervously. We don't have much time. Kane isn't just a thief. He's a monster. And you're not just exposing a fraud, Clara. You're about to uncover a secret that could destroy his entire empire. That's why he's watching you. She leaned in closer. Your mother was never just a maid either. She was Kane's whistleblower. She died trying to stop him. And now you're walking the same path. Clara's heart thundered in her chest. Why didn't you tell me this before? I couldn't. But I can now. Because I have the last piece. Proof. It's all in this flash drive. She handed it to Clara. But be warned, Myra said. Kane knows I have it. And he won't stop until it's buried with me, or with you. Suddenly, a red dot appeared on Myra's chest. Gunshot. The sound cracked like thunder in the hallway. Myra gasped, blood blooming through her coat. Clara screamed, catching her aunt as she collapsed. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. A shadowy figure turned the corner, gun still in hand, face obscured by a black mask. Clara backed away, clutching the flash drive and holding her aunt close. The figure raised the gun again, aimed at Clara. The gunshot still echoed through the narrow service hallway like thunder trapped in a steel drum. Clara screamed, catching her Aunt Myra's limp body as it crumpled in her arms. Her breath came in ragged gasps, the stench of gunpowder mingling with blood and fear. The flash drive, her only hope, was now slick with crimson. She clutched it tighter, even as her hands shook violently. The masked figure stepped closer, the red laser dot dancing up Clara's chest now. Her eyes locked on the gun, then on the face hidden behind that black mask. Why? She whispered, barely able to speak. Why her? She didn't do anything. A deep, male voice responded coldly. She knew too much. Just like you do now. But before the trigger could be pulled, a flashbang exploded behind them. The hallway lit up like lightning. The sound was deafening. Clara was thrown backward as men in tactical gear rushed in, subduing the shooter in seconds. Arms grabbed her, lifted her, pulled her away. Clear. We've got her. Move. She blinked up into the face of Jordan, who had stormed in with a private security team. You're safe, he shouted, but Clara wasn't hearing it. All she saw was Myra's blood on her hands. They raced Clara out of the service wing and into a bulletproof SUV. Where are we going? She gasped. Jordan looked grim. Someplace Kane can't reach you. We need to decrypt that flash drive. Inside a secure safe house hours later, Clara sat silently while a tech specialist worked on the drive. Her aunt's final words still echoed in her mind. Your mother was never just a maid, she died trying to stop him. Her whole life, Clara had believed her mother was a quiet, humble woman. Invisible to most. Now she knew her mother was a fighter, someone who stood against the same monster Clara was now hunting. That knowledge burned inside her, turned her grief into fury. The screen flickered to life. The flash drive contained thousands of files. Offshore bank records. Property deeds under shell companies. A full list of bribes to judges, mayors, even law enforcement. But then came the real shock. A folder labeled Project Goliath. Jordan opened it slowly. Inside were blueprints. Shipment manifests. Personnel rosters. Photos of factories, sweatshops, built overseas using trafficked workers. And worse, evidence that Kane was using his philanthropic image to launder money through fake aid organizations, then funneling that cash into illegal human experimentation labs. Clara covered her mouth in horror. He's not just corrupt. He's evil. There was one video file. She played it. A dark room. A man strapped to a chair. An interrogation. Clara's mother, barely older than Clara is now, stood beside him. I won't let you get away with this, she said in the video. Then Kane's voice came from off-screen. You should have stayed in your place, Eileen. The screen went black. Tears streamed down Clara's face. He murdered her, she whispered. He killed my mother and covered it up. Jordan looked stunned. With this drive we can bring him down for good. But it's going to take everything we have. Clara's voice turned to steel. Then give me everything. If Kane wants war, he's got one. They assembled a team, lawyers, journalists, whistleblowers, digital activists. The goal? To expose Augustus Kane on every level. But Kane was already moving. Clara's bank accounts were frozen. Her phone and social media accounts were hacked. Her home was torched in a mysterious, electrical fire. She knew it was only a matter of time before he came for her again. One night, as Clara prepared to release the data leak to the public, a private call came through to Jordan's secure line. He answered it. A distorted voice crackled through. If Clara releases that drive, she dies. But if she walks away now, we'll forget this ever happened. Jordan's face hardened. Tell Kane she's not backing down. The line went dead. Minutes later, Jordan burst into the room where Clara was preparing her final video statement. You need to see this, he said, pulling up a breaking news feed. A luxury hotel. A bomb had gone off. The Chiron read. Explosion rocks uptown. Officials suspect domestic terror. Clara shook her head. What does this have to do with us? Jordan's face was pale. Look. The news anchor said, authorities confirmed the explosion was targeting a journalist working on a developing investigation related to the Augustus Kane Foundation. The reporter, believed to be working closely with an anonymous whistleblower, has not been found. Clara stepped back, heart racing. That was my contact, she said. Jordan nodded. Kane's sending a message. Anyone who helps you, dies. Clara swallowed hard. Then I have to end this before more people get hurt. They drove to an undisclosed studio where Clara recorded her full exposé. Every file from the flash drive was backed up, ready to upload to servers across the globe. The plan was simple. At 12 noon tomorrow, the video would go live. Kane would be finished. But that night, everything changed. As Clara slept in the safe house, a piercing alarm shattered the silence. Lights turned red. Jordan ran into her room. He found us. They rushed toward the emergency exit, but were cut off by a black SUV skidding into the alleyway. The passenger door opened, and out stepped Augustus Kane. Alive. Come. Smiling. He clapped slowly. You've come a long way, Clara. I almost admire your persistence. She glared at him. You're going to prison for the rest of your life. Kane smirked. You still don't get it, do you? He snapped his fingers. From the SUV, a second figure stepped out, someone Clara hadn't seen in years. Someone she trusted. Clara's voice cracked. No, not you. The traitor smiled coldly. Kane's voice was silk. You were never fighting just me. You were fighting everyone who benefits from me staying in power. And now, you're out of time. Gunman stepped forward. The flash drive was yanked from Jordan's coat. Kane held it up. This ends now. The night air was thick with tension as Augustus Kane stood in the alley, holding the flash drive like a trophy. Clara's eyes burned with rage, her fists clenched at her sides. She could hear Jordan's shallow breathing beside her, still reeling from the shock of what they were seeing. Standing next to Kane, emerging from the shadows like a phantom from Clara's past, was none other than Officer Derek Malone, the same man who had once investigated her mother's death, the same man Clara had trusted to help reopen the case. Now he stood with Kane, a smug smirk on his face. I told you we were close, Kane purred. But you didn't realize just how deep my roots run. Clara's voice trembled. You killed my mother, and now you've corrupted the last person I believed in. Malone chuckled darkly. Your mother was a threat, Clara. Just like you are. She thought the truth would save her. It didn't. And it won't save you either. Jordan stepped forward, fists up. You think taking that drive stops us? You think killing journalists and burning down evidence makes you invincible? Kane tilted his head, bemused. Not invincible, Mr. Gaines. Just insured. He raised his hand, and the gunmen surrounded Clara and Jordan, forcing them to their knees. Kane knelt in front of Clara, looking her dead in the eyes. You had potential. But you made the mistake of thinking power comes from truth. It doesn't. It comes from control. From fear. From secrecy. She spat at his shoes. And your time is almost up. The world will know. Kane stood and laughed. You overestimate the world. They don't want to know. They want comfort, distraction. A good story to tweet about before they move on. He turned to Malone. Finish them. Malone drew his weapon slowly, aiming it at Clara's head. Her heart thundered in her chest. She braced herself. And then, a shot rang out. But it wasn't Malone's gun. He stumbled backward, clutching his arm, blood spraying. Get down, came a voice from the rooftop. Suddenly, floodlights bathed the alley. Red laser sights danced on Kane's men. A helicopter roared above. From behind crates, armed figures in tactical gear rushed forward, not Kane's men but Clara's secret backup. Clara and Jordan ducked and scrambled behind a car as the alley exploded in chaos. Gunfire rattled. Kane's men scattered. Clara saw Kane retreat into his SUV, but not before locking eyes with her, his smile gone, his mask of power slipping. The battle was fierce but swift. Clara's team had the advantage. In moments the alley fell silent. Bodies littered the ground. The flash drive, dropped in the confusion, now lay at Clara's feet. She snatched it and held it tightly. But Kane was gone. Malone had been captured, bleeding and furious. Jordan secured him in cuffs, dragging him toward Clara. "He's all yours." Clara looked him in the eye. "What? Why betray everything you stood for?" Malone sneered. "I stood for survival. Kane offered me something your truth never could, protection." Clara whispered coldly, "Your protection ends now." The next day Clara's exposé went live. The flash drive's contents were uploaded to whistleblower platforms, media outlets and international law enforcement. The fallout was immediate. Kane's name exploded across headlines. Protests erupted. His foundation's donors abandoned him. Investigations opened across 5 countries. Even high-ranking politicians began to distance themselves. But Augustus Kane was still nowhere to be found. Weeks passed. Clara worked tirelessly, organizing survivors, meeting with investigators, coordinating witnesses, building an airtight case. She even confronted the mayor in a live broadcast, forcing her to acknowledge the city's complicity in Kane's rise. Everywhere she went, people no longer saw just a maid. They saw a force of justice. They saw a warrior carrying the legacy of a mother who had refused to stay silent. One morning, as Clara prepared to testify in front of a grand jury, Jordan entered her office with a grim expression. "They found him," he said. Her heart jumped. "Where?" Jordan showed her a security photo. Kane, in disguise, boarding a private jet at a remote airfield. Destination unknown. "He's gone underground," Jordan said. "Interpol is involved now. But if we don't catch him soon, he'll disappear forever." Clara stared at the photo, her fists clenching. "I'm not letting him vanish." She made the call. A private pilot. An old contact from her mother's past. A fixer who owed Clara's family everything. That night, Clara boarded a jet bound for Europe. The trail led her to the Balkans. A hidden estate in the mountains. Rumors of a man rebuilding his empire from the shadows. She infiltrated it with a small team. Cameras. Audio. Backup on standby. They crept through the cold stone halls. And finally, they found him. Kane. Sitting calmly by a fireplace, drinking wine, watching the news, Clara's face on the screen. He didn't flinch when she stepped out of the shadows. "Come to finish what your mother started?" he asked. Clara aimed her weapon. "No. I came to finish what you started." Kane rose slowly, setting his glass down. His expression hardened. "You have no idea what you've unleashed." Suddenly the room darkened. The lights flickered out. Her earpiece crackled. "Clara, get out of there. It's a trap." But before she could move, a gas hissed into the room. Jordan's voice screamed through her comms. "Clara? Do you copy? Clara?" And then, silence. Darkness. Thick and suffocating. The hiss of gas still lingered in the air. Clara's head throbbed. Her limbs were heavy. She could hear muffled voices, the shuffle of boots on marble floors and Kane's low, deliberate footsteps. She was bound to a chair in what looked like an underground chamber, stone walls, flickering torches and rows of surveillance monitors showing every angle of the remote estate. Kane stepped into the light, no longer wearing his crisp tailored suits but a black military-style jacket. He looked like a man preparing for war. "You didn't listen, Clara," he said, his voice calm, almost disappointed. "I told you, truth doesn't save people. It gets them killed." Clara glared at him, blood running down her cheek. "No, Kane. Truth sets people free. And that's why you're terrified of it." Kane chuckled. "I admire your fire. Just like your mother's. But she learned the hard way that fire can burn and be extinguished." He pressed a button and a video played on the monitors. Clara's exposé, her face on international news, protesters chanting her name, political resignations cascading like dominoes. Kane turned back to her, smiling bitterly. You've done damage, he admitted. But nothing I can't rebuild. People forget. Scandals fade. And if I kill the symbol, the world moves on. Suddenly, Kane pulled out a syringe filled with a clear substance. No evidence. No struggle. Just a heart attack in the cold European mountains. A tragic accident. No one will question it. Clara's eyes burned with fury. You can try. But even if I die, you've already lost. Kane scoffed. Oh? How? At that moment, a low rumble echoed above them. The surveillance screens flickered, then cut to black. Kane's eyes narrowed. What? Then an explosion rocked the room. Stone and dust rained from the ceiling. From behind the door, a voice crackled through loudspeakers. This is Interpol. Drop your weapons. We have the building surrounded. Clara's heart pounded. Jordan. He found her. Kane's composure cracked for the first time. He pulled Clara up with one arm, holding the syringe to her neck like a knife. You think they'll make it in time? He growled. I decide how this ends. Suddenly, Clara headbutted him. The syringe clattered to the floor. She swung the chair around and kicked Kane in the chest, sending him flying backward into the monitors. Electric sparks flew. Kane screamed. Clara scrambled to her feet, just as Jordan and the Interpol team burst in. Clara. Jordan shouted, racing to her side. Are you okay? She nodded, gasping for breath. I'm not dying in some dictator's dungeon. Kane groaned, crawling from the wreckage. Blood streamed from his forehead. Still defiant. You think this ends with me? He hissed. There are others. More powerful than you can imagine. I was just the first wave. Jordan leveled his weapon. Then we'll fight every damn wave. Interpol agents tackled Kane, cuffing him. The mighty Augustus Kane, once untouchable, dragged through the dirt, screaming, This isn't over. I made you, Clara. You hear me? I made you. Clara walked up to him slowly, looked him in the eyes and said, No. My mother made me. Kane froze. And then he was gone. Loaded into an armored vehicle. Headed for The Hague. Awaiting trial for crimes against humanity. The world watched. In the weeks that followed, Clara became more than a symbol. She became a movement. Survivors came forward. Politicians were unseated. An entire system of corruption unraveled. The city honored her mother posthumously with a memorial. The street where Clara had once walked as a maid now bore her mother's name, Adelaide Williams Way. And Clara? She started an international foundation, the Williams Institute for Truth and Justice, dedicated to protecting whistleblowers, domestic workers, and victims of corruption around the globe. Jordan stood by her side as always. 1 year later, Clara stood before a massive crowd at the grand opening of the Institute's new headquarters. She wore no maid's uniform. She wore white. Elegant, confident, powerful. As she stepped up to the podium, the crowd hushed. I used to think being invisible was survival, she said. That if I stayed quiet, no one would hurt me. But silence doesn't protect us, it buries us. She looked into the cameras. I was called just a maid. But I was never just anything. I am my mother's daughter. I am a survivor. I am a fighter. And I'm not alone. The crowd erupted in applause. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she smiled. Because finally, after all the pain, all the loss, all the injustice, Clara Mae Williams had won. And this time the whole world saw her.